Hello, writers. Welcome to week number 4 of English 101. I'm really glad you're here. Can you believe we are on week number 4? And at the end of this week, we will be 1/4 of the way through this course already. How time is flying for us. So I'm going to forewarn you, it looks like we have a ton of work for this week. In reality, it is true that the Suresh Kanagaraja piece is quite long. And I know that there is a lot of jargon that goes along with that particular piece. So what I have done is to use AI using Notebook LM. And with Notebook LM, along with the article itself that you need to read, I have also posted a brief overview, almost like an abstract that tells you the basics of what the Kanagaraja piece is about. I also had them create a sort of little podcast that you can listen to. I believe that is about 15 minutes long, and that really nails down the key terminology. So I don't want you to be afraid of all of the just, it feels like word vomit, to be very, very honest with you. Pages and pages and pages. Kanagaraja is the kind of writer that does go on at some length. He has important things to say. He makes claims that are very valid, in my opinion. And he really gets us thinking about writing and the expectations of standard formal English in a slightly more nuanced way than we've been dealing with so far. And Kanagaraja will be one of the writers that you're going to write about. So I'm not going to talk about him here. I'm going to do a very quick video in addition to this that talks about Kanagaraja and what he is proposing. For this week, I'm just going to go over the assignments. So we do have the Kanagaraja reading, and you can see that it's got a pretty hefty word count. I would recommend taking this particular piece in chunks. Maybe do the first maybe 4 or 5 sections, take a little bit of a breather, go another 4 or 5 sections, and go about it that way throughout the course of the week, perhaps rather than sitting down all at one time and trying to digest him. One thing you will want to do is to annotate and take notes about the terms that he is using, because those terms are going to appear in the writing prompt for essay number 1, which you are receiving this week. I am also asking you to view the video World Englishes, also known as Purposive Communication. That gives a little bit more detail to help us understand what Kanagaraja is talking about when he speaks of those World Englishes. And then I've also included a brief podcast. The podcast is interesting because it actually pulls in this concept of world Englishes, and it demonstrates the ways that the way we use particular words in our language versus the way other cultures use those very same words. Those very same words mean very different things in different cultures. So, for instance, one of the things they're going to introduce is a particular word that we use here in the United States, and it is also used in Jamaica. And in Jamaica, it is for a completely different reason and for a different purpose. It's really interesting, and it helps us to get our minds around this concept of words are different depending on where you go. So if you think in terms of Great Britain, for instance, here in the United States, we use the words either a bathroom or a restroom, a ladies' room, a men's room. If you were over in England, they would call that a loo. If we are at the bank or the credit union, we think of it as standing in a line. Whereas if I were in London today, I would be in a queue. Queue, queue. Um, we also have the word schedule in common here in the United States as opposed to in the UK. Here we pronounce it as schedule. There they would pronounce it as schedule. So I'm asking you to listen to this brief podcast because it really gives us a chance to really kind of think and process the way that different words are being used. You do also have the discussion board. And for this week's discussion board, the work that you're going to do this week is really going to set you up to be writing your essay next week. I have provided several different questions and prompts for things that I'd like you to think about. Um, and in all likelihood, the ideas that you're going to get for your first essay, they're going to start with the seeds that you plant in discussion board number 4. Some of you have been doing a fantastic job of expanding those thoughts, and I encourage you to do that. Don't do just a minimum 200 or 230 words. Literally, the more you do, the more you're going to be able to use those writings to help you to generate ideas when you have to write this big essay number 1. And I am also asking you to do the Reflecting Forward digital journal. I see some people have already gone in and posted weeks 2 and 3. If you have posted those, I have gone ahead and graded them. If you have not made your Reflecting Forward journal, that's worth 5 points each and every week. And also, you never know when I'm going to give extra credit. If something is done really, really well, I may tack on an additional few points here and there. Um, really, this journal is designed to help you process through the changes that you're going through as you're learning more about the field of writing, about the way that we use English in different areas of the world for different purposes. We're going to talk about code switching and code meshing. And I'm going to ask you to think about your ideas, your thoughts, your beliefs on using these. So it's really important for your critical reflection. All of this stuff is going to happen gradually. This new knowledge, these changes in the way you think, it's going to happen gradually. But when you write the critical reflection itself, you're responsible for documenting the entire basically journey that you go through in your process of doing English 101. Now, one thing I'm going to go back to is week number 1, and I'm going to pull up the PAR. So I have not included the PAR this week, but you do have access to it in week number 1. So I want to go over a few of the key ideas that you will be using as you write essay number 1. So here at the top, your portfolio should demonstrate conventions of academic writing. When we say situating the writer's own ideas in relation to cited sources, you know that Gubala and Kanagaraja and any of the readings that we're going to be doing for the entire semester, those writers are going to have their own ideas. When you write for this particular class, it's not enough to parrot what so and so says, what they think, what they believe. It's not enough to offer definitions or an explanation of what a concept is. You need to have an opinion. You need to have a belief about the content that we have been working with. And you can agree with these people, or you can totally disagree with these people. You might agree in some ways and disagree in other ways. Those are your own ideas, your unique to you claims. Those are of key importance. So when I say situating your own ideas within the source materials, you would be commenting on Gubala, for instance, and talking about maybe what you recognize from your own life, um, being similar to what Gubala et al. Talk about. You might talk about the way that you have been taught so far with your writing career about using proper grammar and punctuation and capitalization and all of that good stuff. Um, those are your own experiences, your own beliefs. But then you can also go ahead and talk about whether or not you agree or disagree. For instance, we're going to talk about code meshing and code switching, for instance, in Kanagaraja. And I will be asking you to reflect, do you think that code meshing is better than code switching or vice versa? And why? So when you situate your ideas, you're talking about what you believe and you are using the content from our course to help support your claims and your argument. You're borrowing the ethos, the credibility of the authors that we will be studying, the videos that we will be studying to help support your own claims. Establishing controlling purpose. In essence, your controlling purpose is your thesis. It's what you will argue. So for your thesis statement, you will want to locate your ideas, those ideas that we just talked about, those situated ideas, in your thesis statement. So you might talk about Kanagaraja claims X, Y, and Z, and this is important because, and those because reasons are going to be your particular argument. You might also want to talk about who should care about what you in Kanagaraja are claiming. So it's not enough to just talk about what Kanagaraja says. You want to reflect on what he's talking about, and think in terms of how might I use this source to support my own claims, my own beliefs. Defining key terms, that's obvious. Naming names. So when you are talking about the readings, you will want to add Gubala et al. You're going to want to add Kanagaraja, for instance. Consistently revealing and following lines of inquiry. Lines of inquiry are the subtopics that you will be talking about. So for your first essay, you will be talking about the Gubala et al. Piece, and you will be talking about Kanagaraja, and you will be talking about your own beliefs. Each of those is a subtopic or a line of inquiry. You're going to flesh out those ideas in multiple paragraphs apiece. This is not your grandma's 5-paragraph essay. You will have multiple paragraphs talking about Kanagaraja. You will have multiple paragraphs talking about Gubala et al. You will have multiple paragraphs talking about your claims and supporting your claims. Substantiating claims to develop inquiries using appropriate reference pages and in-text citations. So that means that you are backing up your claims by borrowing the credibility, by borrowing the sources that we have been talking about. So substantiating your claims is just giving evidence from the sources that we've worked with. And if you decide to do any outside research, you can also do that, as long as it's a good quality source. Hint for the wise, do not use Wikipedia as a source ever in college. The reason for that is because any wingnut can add anything they want to Wikipedia, and it does not have to be correct. And then if you turn around and you use Wikipedia and wingnut's information and it's wrong, who looks like the wingnut now, right? Do not use Wikipedia. Do not use Quora. Do not use Reddit. Things like that are not viable academic sources. Negotiating conventional or unconventional mechanics and usage to guide readers' understanding of ideas, that is using standard formal English. So basically, using all of your best writing practices that you have learned this far and adding those to your argument. You do want to quote, paraphrase, and summarize. We will talk a little bit about what each of these is in a future video. Extending detailed examples. So that means actually fleshing out your ideas. So when you talk about your line of inquiry, you're not going to have just one or two sentences explaining what you are talking about on this particular topic. You want to add details about the topic. Those are detailed examples. You can use maps, visuals, graphics, pictures, diagrams, all of that. And pursuing lines of reasoning. When you pursue lines of reasoning, you are showing the ways that what you are saying connects to the source materials in a logical way. What is your reasoning behind making your connections to the course content? You're explaining that logic. And that's all I'm going to cover for the PAR for today. We will talk next week about the second section because that will also be going into your writing, but I do not want to belabor the situation. I'm going to go back to our assignments for this week. One-on-one conferences will be held the week of February 16th for high school students. I realize that may be February vacation for you. We do not have February vacation at UMaine. We will be following the schedule that is set out by UMaine, and you are required to book a one-on-one conference. I have linked my Google calendar here, and I have set out a variety of times on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of that week, times that are not listed as potential appointment slots that you can book. Those are busy. I cannot meet you during those times. I do think that everybody should be able to find a good time to meet in that week, but if your work schedule or your class schedule makes it so you're not able to meet at any of the times that are available, please let me know and I will try to find another option for us. And again, if you are in high school, even if you are on February break, I do expect you to participate in a conference. Conferences are approximately 20 minutes in length. They can be in person or virtually. So when you book your conference, please email me to let me know that you booked your conference and what your preference is as to whether you want it virtually or you want it to be in person. I have included the Kanagaraja reading as a PDF, as well as a library link. And then here is the Notebook LM overview. So this really puts everything in a nutshell, sort of like what an abstract would do, gives you a general idea of what Kanagaraja is going to be talking about. I recommend reading this overview before you attempt to read the article. And then after you read the article, I would recommend listening to the Notebook LM podcast, as it were. It's only 15 minutes, but it frames everything in a very it's a concise way and it's an understandable way, and they actually draw specific links that you may not pick up on in the writing. Again, it's a long reading. I understand it's a long reading. I do want you to read it because that's what you're going to be quoting in your paper or paraphrasing in your paper. But I have provided these options to help you to recognize what's going on in Kanagaraja. I've also included a glossary of some of the words that he uses that you may or may not know. With that said, I do expect students to look up terms that they are unfamiliar with. That is just a fact. In college, you do need to look up your materials, your definitions, and what have you. But Kanagaraja uses a lot of high vocabulary. So I have included some of what I believe are the most important terms to know. This is by no means every term that you may not know, and I do expect you to look up words that you don't know if they are not listed here in this glossary, but hopefully this will be helpful to you as you are reading. You may even want to copy and paste these definitions into little comments if you use this as a Google Doc or a PDF. We also have a brief video on world Englishes and then that little podcast. Here is your discussion prompt. Your reflecting forward journal for week number 4 is here as well. You do not have to upload these to Brightspace. I automatically go in and assign the grade. I'm going right into Book Creator, putting comments right into Book Creator for you. If you have not already done this, you do need to make your reflecting forward journal. You do need to catch up. Please make sure that you mark each week. Week 1, here's my reflection. Week 2, here's my reflection. Week 4, so on and so forth. Some of you are adding additional resources. Yes, yes, do that. If you are thinking that you might want to add additional resources to your writing, that is only going to help you. And this reflecting forward journal can also be used alongside your discussion board posts as you're working on your major essays. So yes, add additional information. Some of you are actually posting a couple of times in a given week because your thinking is changing from one day to the next. Bravo, brava, document that. It's going to help you later. And we have our writing prompt for essay number 1. So the way that I work this, draft number 1 is submitted and it comes to only me. Draft number 2 is the one that you are going to share with your peer review team. And you will have between February 27th and February 29th to be able to provide that peer review feedback. You do receive a grade for high quality peer review. And if you do not provide high quality peer review, a 0 will definitely hurt the number of points that you are earning. You can choose to meet together in person if you are able to. If you are not, you can meet virtually, you can do Zoom, you can do Google Meets if you have Microsoft Teams. That's totally up to you. But I will be asking in next week's reflection journal, I'm sorry, the week after's reflection journal, to talk about the feedback that you got and who you worked with and what you valued and what you would have liked to see in your feedback. And then the final draft will be due on March 6th. And you will receive additional feedback on that final draft once we get closer to portfolio assessment windows. So as you can see for draft number 1, I want 750 to 850 words. You should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. The next time around, it boosts by about 100 words. You can go over that 850 or 950. And by the time you get done, your so-called final draft, your third draft will be at least 950 to 1100 words. And that is all plus your bibliography. Your bibliography does not count toward your word count. And again, you can go over the word count as long as you are not constantly repeating yourself. So here is the prompt. I'm going to let you read through this on your own. And I anticipate that there will be some questions, which is perfectly fine. We've gone on for quite some time with this week's introductory video and talking about the PAR. So I'm going to end this here. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, complaints, scary dreams, freaky things, spiders in your bedroom or bats in your attic, please reach out. And I hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.